Thank you for listening to CFB Talks Digital Assets. This recording is for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. It is not intended, nor should it be considered an invitation or inducement to buy or sell any of the underlying instruments cited, including but not limited to crypto assets, financial instruments, or any instruments that reference any index provided by CF Benchmarks Limited. This recording is not intended to persuade or incite you to buy or sell a security or securities noted within. Any commentary, interviews, and discussions are opinions only and should not be considered a personalized recommendation. Please contact your financial advisor or professional before making any investment decision. Some of the underlying instruments cited within this recording may be restricted to certain customer categories in certain jurisdictions.
You're listening to CFB Talks Digital Assets, the home of informed conversation about crypto for institutions building the future of finance, presented by CF Benchmarks. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of CFB Talks Digital Assets. I'm Ken O'Deleger, Head of Content, and in this episode, we're joined by our co-host, Thomas Adosi, Head of Product, who's standing in for Gabe Selby. And in this episode, what we're going to focus on is our new index, the CF Meta Lab GameFi Index, and our new partnership with Meta Lab. For this, we are fortunate enough to be joined by the Chief Product Officer of Meta Lab, Flora Lou Yubao, who's joining us from Hong Kong. So this is a great opportunity for us to talk about the new partnership, the new index, the type of institutions that we expect to use the index and how they'll use it, the methodology underlying the index, and also we'll touch on where we see our partnership with Meta Lab going in the future. So Flora, we are so stoked that you're able to join us. Thank you very much.
And thanks for having me.
Now, I think a great place to start is a little bit about your professional background, Flora, because it turns out that it's quite important for how the partnership between CF Benchmarks and Meta Lab came about. Now, I understand that in your prior role, you were a quantitative research analyst. So how did you hear about CF Benchmarks when you were undertaking that role?
Yeah, so my background is math and computer science and a little bit of finance. So it's pretty natural for me to perceive a quant job. So it's like a dream job for all those, backgrounds. Yeah, so my first job is quant analyst or quant trader for cryptocurrencies, but my focus more on the vol trading. So it's basically structured products and, volatility, statistical arbitrage and all those stuff. So basically I'm dealing with options, all day long. And, outside the US, we use Deribit quite a lot, but then in US, we have to use SEMI, they cannot touch US citizens. So yeah, so options in US, we use SEMI quite a lot. So I definitely learned about CF Benchmark from that pretty naturally. And also, besides the option itself, we do a lot of OTC tradings with our customers. And the thing is, for OTC, we have to have an index, settlement price for, both parties. In crypto markets, it's very different on different exchanges, right? Maybe on this exchange, the customer is in the money. On other exchange, it's like out of money. So it's very important we have like a fair index, I guess. So I spend a lot of time studying the CF Benchmark Bitcoin index, SEMI, actually the index. I have to explain that to our customers, how it's constructed, why it's the fair index, why we cannot just use, the price on Binance, just for you. We have to use the fair price. So yeah, that's why I actually spend some time studied your whole methodologies. And also we need to present to the customer, it's not only it's a crypto indices, but also it's backed by CME, which is a traditional, the exchange value. So it's very important.
Perfect. Wonderful. It's great to hear that the reputation of CF Benchmarks has percolated so far and wide, including Hong Kong. But perhaps we shouldn't be surprised by that. So then moving on to your current role, what exactly is Meta Lab?
Yeah, so the story going to begin with Harvest Group. It's one of the largest and oldest asset manager in China with over 200 billion asset under management. So yeah, we established it back in 1999. And also we actually dived into fintech back in 2012, starting with various initiatives like Data Lab and AI Lab. We're pretty just like forward in our Web3 world back like 10 years ago. And then it's more like Harvest Digital Asset is the root of Meta Lab. So it's more like a department, like a strategic hub internally. It's a department, but then for the legal and regulatory reasons, we expanded into the Meta Lab, which is an independent entity globally. So yeah, it's just like a digital asset hub.
Perfect. Yeah, that really does break it down for us, because like anywhere, you have quite often a network of entities that have to exist for various reasons.
Yeah.
Can be marketing, can be legal, can be regulatory. So that really does clarify. So taking it a little bit further, why did Harvest Group, the large asset manager that you mentioned that is strongly associated with Meta Lab, why did Harvest Group decide to establish Meta Lab? And obviously that leads on to the sort of the index and where we are now. But why did Harvest take that initial step?
Yeah, so as I was saying, is we are like internally, we have a strong belief in Web3, AI, all those intelligent stuff. We have a strong belief in it. And then also because we have established Harvest Global Investment in Hong Kong back in 2008. So we also have like a strong belief in Hong Kong for its openness, and it's pretty vital in the financial markets in compared to mainland China. So all those things combined with Web3 and how open Hong Kong is right now is like establishing itself as a finance like Web3 hub in Asia. So it's a key point. I think it's like a joint timing for us to establish Meta Lab as it's like a parallel with the Harvest Global Investment, all those financial entities. We position Meta Lab as the Web3 specialist. So it's more from the tech side. Just like in addition to all of our financial institutions in Hong Kong.
Brilliant. That neatly cues me up to getting on to talk about the index. So the CF Meta Lab GameFi Index, the recently launched index, it was launched in partnership by CF Benchmarks and our partners Meta Lab. What is it exactly? Which is obviously a portfolio index designed to capture the returns of GameFi protocols. But what are GameFi protocols? Well, obviously, we start with the fact that it's a portmanteau. The word itself is a portmanteau of game and finance, in the same way that DeFi is a portmanteau of decentralized and finance. So it's akin to that in spirit, whereby in GameFi, it really relates to play to earn gaming. So it's a similar thing to that. But if we skim off the layer of jargon from the concept, we find out that, in fact, GameFi play to earn is not solely limited to play to earn protocols. So turning to you, Thomas, as head of product, you'll know that GameFi is just a part of the story as far as the CF Meta Lab GameFi index goes. If we examine the constituents of the index, we see tokens like ETH, of course, SHIB, and APE, and others. So what have these got to do with play to earn gaming?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ken. Great question. So during the development of the index, we were really aiming for the product to be as representative of the entire GameFi ecosystem as possible, which turns out to be very multifaceted. So GameFi has numerous touching points with, for example, metaverse projects, with virtual reality and augmented reality, but also NFT platforms and social sectors. So we really wanted to create a holistic view of everything that is GameFi. Now, beyond that, at CF Benchmarks, we believe that it's important to also represent the entire value chain that is necessary to deliver any sort of dApp applications, but specifically GameFi products and services in this instance. And it's very important to remember that dApps, like for example, the Axie Infinity game, they don't exist in a vacuum. They usually sit on top of a value chain, and the value chain is made up of definitely a settlement network where transactions generated by the GameFi applications are settled. More often than not, they will settle on the Ethereum blockchain. And then in addition to that, you frequently have things like on-chain services. So those are protocols that actually enable, the creation and the management as well of blockchain infrastructure and blockchain utilities. So those are, for example, the likes of scaling solutions, and data oracles fall into this category as well. So long story short, this is the reason why you will find the likes of ETH and, for example, Polygon Matic, because they are key components of blockchain architecture that are required to deliver that sort of holistic exposure to decentralized gaming.
Perfect. That really does clarify. I'm thinking that this is a portfolio index. The GameFi index is a portfolio index, but it has 3 sub-portfolios. Are those sub-portfolios related to the additional protocols that are required to deliver protocols that are expressly associated with GameFi?
Yeah, absolutely. So this comes back to what I just mentioned about the value chain of these GameFi dApps. So like you say, the GameFi portfolio index is made up of 3 sub-portfolios to really ensure that, that constant exposure to all elements of the value chain that is necessary to deliver the GameFi products and services. And you have the sector applications. So that's the first sub-portfolio. And then just below that, you have the on-chain services and the settlement networks at the bottom to complete the value chain. And that's basically how the index is structured as well.
So Thomas, how are the constituents weighted in the GameFi index?
So the constituents go through a quarterly review based on our CF Digital Asset classification structure, the DAX as we call it. And the DAX is basically just a taxonomy akin to MSCI GICS that CF Benchmarks developed specifically for digital assets. And it classifies digital assets into separate buckets based on the role that they play within the digital asset ecosystem. And so, for example, GameFi, those assets live in the culture subcategory of our DAX, and that just lives under the sector category of our DAX. And so this taxonomy acts as a cornerstone tool to select constituents on a recurring basis. So in terms of the weighting, the 3 sub-portfolios actually have fixed weight attributed. So it's 70% to the sector dApps, so the GameFi dApps in this scenario, and then 15% each to the on-chain services and the settlement networks. And within those individual buckets, those sub-portfolios, the constituents are weighted based on their respective free float market caps, which are snapped quarterly, and the GameFi index is then also rebalanced quarterly. Just to take a step back, it would be interesting for us to just really, touch on why CF Benchmarks and Meta Lab collaborated to create this index and how Hong Kong institutions will use the CF Meta Lab GameFi index. And Flora, coming back to you on that, we understand there's a great deal of interest among Hong Kong asset managers in Web3 and in GameFi specifically. And this was sort of the key driver for creating the index. But how exactly do you expect asset managers to use the index?
So, just as we launch the index, a lot of interest have in being apported to me. They are willing to track it as a tracker fund, because there's no actually the sector indices in Hong Kong. There are maybe just single asset like Bitcoin or Ether. There's no any sector whatsoever. But mainly maybe big cap, but still that's not a sector one. So in traditional finance, it should be, a lot of sectors, infrastructure ones or GameFi, metaverse, it should be something like that. If we were in a traditional finance world. So they were really excited about it. So in put it to use, so in to putting a very concrete answer, they wanted to launch the tracker fund, tracking this indices. So that's tracking all those indices. I guess that's main use. But definitely they're gonna be very creative on it. For starters, they can do smart beta one. So it's naturally we have a beta one. So this is our beta, the GameFi, and then they're gonna use their fundamental research strategies and quant strategies, just something they throw together. And then they're going to have those smart beta ones. So that's something in the cooking, hope to launch really soon.
Excellent. And what about sort of how does Meta Lab fit into those plans? Would it be Meta Lab directly offering these financial products, or how will that work?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So how do we come into this? So for starters, we can be advisor. Yeah, so that's like a plain simple way to be advisor on those funds. So it's a quite popular collaboration in Hong Kong as well. Like, because for the like licensing and regulatory issues, there are like funds without the qualification, but they wanted to do it. So maybe, they have a collaborate with the funds who had the license, all those players all come together, they're going to, release a fund. So that's one way we can be advisor. And then secondly, since we have Harvest International Securities, which is our sell-side business in Hong Kong, so we are the qualified distributor. We can distribute all those products. So that's how we going to play secondly. And yeah, definitely. So the lastly is like we want to do structured products. It's something we really do well in Hong Kong, also in mainland China as well. So we're gonna do structured products, betting on the index, which is also a very established business in traditional world, I guess. So you have a structured product and you're betting on the index. So yeah, something we're looking forward to do like really, really soon as well.
Sure. So, Flora, we started talking about a little bit about long-term plans. Just follow on with that theme. You mentioned last week and also today, you've really got that point across that the institutional investment landscape in Hong Kong is really favorable to Web3 in general and maybe GameFi as well. So does Meta Lab itself plan to lean into that demand with, more portfolio indices, just like the GameFi one, under the partnership with CF Benchmarks?
Yes, for sure. Since it's a series, right? It should conclude more than one. Yeah, we definitely are looking forward to do release more indices with CF Benchmark, and so we have like discussed internally. We're have much interested in different and also the layer 2 infrastructure ones. So all those come quite of interest to us. Yeah, and people like the infrastructure, it's the core of whole the ecosystem, right? So we're definitely looking forward to do that. I should also mention we're looking to launch the spot ETF as well, like following the footstep of BlackRock is thing in US. And since like BlackRock is applying for the spot Bitcoin ETF with the benchmark indices, right? So we are going to do that as well. We just learned that you guys have a Asia settled rate, right? And like it settled through Hong Kong's time. So that's brilliant. We're gonna use that to construct our spot ETF, and we hope to see that soon to get approved.
Sure. Yes, the variant of our benchmark Bitcoin index that you're referring to is quite recently launched, the CME. CF Bitcoin reference rate Asia Pacific, which has a Hong Kong reference time. I think it's 4 p.m. Hong Kong. Yes, that would, I think, be very, very convenient for asset managers like Meta Lab or like Harvest Group to actually utilize. So are these plans advanced or at a preliminary stage, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, for us, we wanted to do it like right this second, but yeah, for the regulatory issues, we definitely need to apply and wait for our Security and Financial Committee, like SFC in Hong Kong to prove it. SFC in Hong Kong is very innovative and welcoming, but yet risk like aware. We talk about investors protection quite a lot. It's very important for our financial ecosystem as well. So that's why I feel like the benchmark is definitely a good index, index series, and it gives the transparency and also the fairness we need to present to the SFC. Yeah, we refer to this index series. It's it's transparent. Its methodology is quite open and investable. So it's actually for us, it's a really big collaboration in a strategic way, and also we're gonna take this to our SFC as well to explain the reasoning behind the collaboration and how we value this, moving forward. Yeah.
That's brilliant to hear. And obviously, we very much look forward to working more closely with you guys. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Flora.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us. And for people who want to find out more about Meta Lab and the partnership with CF Benchmarks, I understand that they should go to the harvestglobal.com homepage. That's the major group that's associated with Meta Lab. And of course, they can follow Meta Lab HK on X, formerly known as Twitter. So for people who want to find out more about these CFB Talks Digital Asset podcast, of course, we really appreciate you listening to this one. We now have a full catalog of episodes available for your listening and viewing pleasure. You can, if you want to watch it, navigate to Vimeo or YouTube and search CFB Talks Digital Assets. For podcast listeners, we are on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple and others. All you need to do is navigate to CFB Talks Digital Assets, press the enter button, and you'll find all of our episodes. While you're doing that, please do us a favor and subscribe by following the podcast series on Spotify and Apple, and give us a like if you're watching on YouTube or Vimeo or listening on Google Podcasts or a platform like that. Of course, the podcast is just one aspect of our content output here at CF Benchmarks. We also have a newsletter, which is the most frequently released bit of content. It's followed up by a monthly market recap, which is produced by our lead research analyst, Gabe Selby, CFA. You can find those every month. And then going a higher level up, also utilizing the CF digital asset classification structure that Thomas mentioned, we have our unique quarterly attribution reports, which basically utilize the CF DAX to discover the major drivers of crypto from one quarter to the next. And you can find all of those on cfbenchmarks.com. So yeah, guys, we really appreciate your presence and we really appreciate your interest in everything that we do. And we hope to see you again for another episode of CFB Talks Digital Assets. Thanks for joining us.